Alright folks, well hopefully you just showed up from our last video. We're going to make this real simple. We're going to take off this whole front fascia, front bumper, a little support panel that goes behind it. We're going to get all that out of the way, and that'll make life so much easier for us for everything else that we have to do. So let's get started. First we're going to take off these push pins. We got a 10, 10, 10. We're going to take out, oh sorry, another 10. Sorry, right there. We're going to take out both headlights. That makes it a lot easier to get this in and out, and they have to come out anyway. Here's the other one. Same for the right side. If you were not taking off the front bumper to do your radiator, I highly suggest you taking out the headlight, because you can get to the transmission cooler so much easier that way. Alright, so we're going to take off our fender flares. And there is a 10 mil holding the bumper. I think it's a 10 mil. It's a 10 or an 8. It's 10. That part to come loose. We'll do the other side real quick. Now we've already done the bottom part in another video when we were dropping the subframe, so we don't have to worry about those front lower fascia bolts. These guys just clip in to that right there. And then we got, we got two 13s right there. I have lights and sirens to worry about. For you, there are some clips right there on each side. Now with your trim tool, you can pull up this and get to the clips. I believe I've been in the face on this one, so unless the ambulance manufacturer is nice and put in quick disconnects. Oh, they did. Cool. And they just popped right off. I'm going to take these little guys out of the way to help get the radiator out. But the rest of this could stay here. There's no sense in going back up in the air with this at all until I drain the AC system. So let's do that. Alright, so now that we got that out of the way, all the radiator and all that stuff can come out. We still have to drain it. I'm not going to do the front cover tear down until I'm done with the exhaust manifolds on both sides, because in case I have to do any welding or grinding a bolt down, using an easy out, any drilling, anything like that. I don't want any of that getting into the engine, so I'm not going to take any of the intake, any of that off. But we will get all of the charge air cooling stuff out of the way, the radiator, the intercooler, we're going to get all of that out of the way. So we can go ahead and get it up in the air and drain it and start getting a lot of that piping out of the way. All right, we're going to get a lot of these charge air pipe connections off. Next, we got to get our AC line out of the way. Both of these are attached with push clips, and they have to get detached from this piece, because this piece right here is what holds the entire radiator in. The whole radiator slides out the bottom. The radiator hoses are pretty much up top, and then you have two transmission cooler hoses up there. We'll lower it down to get those off. But we'll get this close to the ground, that way when we drop it down, it can't fall and crash down with it down. Sorry, this one's held on. The transmission cooler lines are held on to this too with a torque, so we have to get that guy out of there as well. So we need to get the trans cooler lines off. Those are two 8 mils. Drain pan down there to catch it. Let me get my... Yeah, this is much easier to do with the front bumper off, I can promise you that. One hose clamp, have to come to the other one from the other direction. I swear Ford puts an adhesive on these. Oh, that one doesn't need to come off, sorry. Just this one down here. That one can go with the radiator assembly out the bottom. The bottom one needs to come off. Sorry I can't get you a better camera angle. Rinse that hose off. That one can stay. We need to unhook our coolant fans, which are right here. For some reason it's like, oh, whole engine's tilted forward, that's why. Forgot all about that. Let me get that air horn off. Alright, look at all that wonderful room we have now to service that turbocharger. And after all that, we bought all that room so you can do this thing in vehicle. Now, you don't have to take off the transmission. I don't even know if you would have to necessarily remove the exhaust system, probably just loosen it up on the Y pipe and the rear pipe and just let it drop down and slide back a little bit. You wouldn't have to drop the whole subframe to do the exhaust studs. But we're at the point now where we can service that exhaust manifold. Okay, I'll try my best to show you what I'm doing here. This turbocharger, the coolant connection is this quick disconnect type connection, and it's got this little spring clip basically that I'm trying to hook with a pick, failing quite miserably at it. I was not able to video the removal of the turbocharger. It was just too difficult to try to video at the same time. So the turbocharger is out of the way. We're gonna go ahead and get the radiator out of the way so we can get the AC compressor out of the way, because we are replacing the fitting on the end of that line, and then we are replacing this entire assembly, and the AC compressor's in the way of that. So I got Wes here. He's gonna help me get the radiator down. We've already unhooked all the hoses. I'm just gonna have him hold it for me while I take the bottom 10 bolts out, or bottom 10 millimeter bolts out that'll hold in the intercooler and the radiator, and then the whole thing will drop out the bottom. Just this, you got a hold of it. Just hold the fans. Grab that up. Yep. Go ahead. I got it. Got it? Yep. You got all of it? Yep. Now with that off, you can really get a good visualization how bad that front cover was leaking. Yeah, that thing was, it was pissing the oil. We're gonna go ahead and get this belt off. It's got two of them. Go ahead and replace these guys while we're here. That twist this way. That way we can loosen that AC compressor and tie it to the side for right now. It doesn't need to come all the way out. Now that the AC compressor's out of the way, we can see every one of our bolts, so we can get to the two lines that we need to replace. So let the real masochism begin, I guess. I can already hear the whole internet saying, I know there ain't no way in hell he's about to try to crack those off without at least giving them a two to the good stuff. You'd be correct. I'm not. Alright, let's see how many we get off and how many we go chasing for. So far, it's a good start. Oh, God damn it. Helps if I go the right direction. Took the whole stud out on that one. Took the whole stud on that one. Oh man, I don't want to say anything, but you know what I'm thinking. Sitting there thinking, don't do that. Don't give me hope. I'm just going to shut up for a few more. Well, I'm dropping every one of them now. Yeah, maybe that's my good luck charm. Just drop every one of them. Go on. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Sweet baby Jesus. Send me the good vibes. Come on. There we go. Yes. Sometimes the gods look down upon us and smile. Now, you're probably sitting there thinking, yo, you could have just tried an easy out and zipped that thing out and zipped a new one in and not had to take all that crap off. Well, my fittings were leaking. And look at that head. You guys see the head? You see that? That all needs to be cleaned off. It's not going to seal the right way. That's not doing the job right. That's doing it the lazy way. We need to go in there and clean up that surface, put on some new gaskets. And I'm pretty sure that manifold's been warped by being allowed to be loose like that for that long. So we're gonna put on new manifolds and new gaskets and do the job the right way. Now we're gonna take out these two lines. I just looked and they did not send me my dadgum exhaust gaskets. Going to be about as far as I go today. I think it's there. Huh. That should not have come out like that. I'm glad I got that on camera. Is that part 3? Pop it out of its hole. That guy just slides right on out. Good Lord. Of course, there's more coolant to come out. So we'll get our new one in here. It's got an O-ring on it. Doesn't need any Teflon tape or anything like that. And it just needs to be snugged. Nothing too crazy. Alright, now we can pop this guy gently back in its home. Alright, there's that. Now we can put that coolant line back. So 71 inch-pounds and then 30 degrees. So our oil supply tube's on. I'm going to put some tape over this guy so nothing can fall into it. Although I'm pretty sure when I took out that turbo, some coolant went in there, but that's alright. We're draining out the oil anyway. But after that, we can, after my gaskets get here, we can put the turbo on the right side and button up this side and go on to the left side. I do not have any broken studs on the left side, so what all I'm going to do, because it's not leaking over here, I thought I had some broken studs, so I think that's another truck that I have to do. I'm just going to remove that rear stud and replace it with a fresh one, because just the way that this is designed, can you see this okay? The way the exhaust is designed is a bit of a flaw, because they have only one bolt way back here. The closest two bolts are here and here, and all the weight of the turbo is right there. So it's just a lot of stress for that one bolt to hold on to, and that's where it breaks, and that's where you can see all the exhaust leaking. So I'm just going to replace this rear stud since it's not leaking on the left side, and I can actually start putting stuff back together after I do that front cover. But since I was here and it was easy to do, I went ahead and pulled out the #1 likely to break stud and popped in a new one, so hopefully we're warding off evil spirits by doing that. So that was pretty easy to do while you're here. Just rip it out and put a new one in, but none are broken on that side, and hopefully with us replacing that one, none will break for a while. That's BS excuse, I know. There we go. 4 on top, 3 on bottom, 1 in the back. And ta-da! And now you guys can see why that those studs like to break in the back. The area where they have the most weight, the most heat, and that's the area where they use the least amount of hardware. Which doesn't make sense to me, because I hope you guys can see there's a hole right here that's partially covered. If they would have put a mounting boss right here, they could have put another nut right there. They could have, but they didn't. There's another spot right here where they could have put a mounting boss, but they didn't. There's several spots up top, but they didn't. This was a stupid design. Ford needs to own up on that one. Alright, so we got our gasket in. As you can see, it's sitting up there. It's honestly easier to slip this in from the front than from back there. These are mechanical lock nuts, so they'll only go on a little bit. Now I know it won't fall off. Alright, so you saw the tightening sequence there. Now we're going to torque this thing down first to 168 inch-pounds. This will compress that 4-core gasket. And then the next one is going to be 18 foot-pounds. Trying to get that Jiffy tight connection to go inside the turbo there. Might need to loosen that up just so I have some wiggle room to get it locked in and then tighten it back down. That bolt to get it to pop in, what I'm talking about is right here. I'm gonna try to push that guy on in while I wiggle the turbo a little bit. These things kind of have to be friggin' precise to slip into their hole. I think that's got it. I'm gonna need to get an inspection mirror to see. It's right there. It needs to go in a little bit further. It is not done yet. That little spring needs to be popped down over it. Come on, let's get on there. I need to tighten up these turbo bolts a bit so it doesn't flop around as much. There we go. Just slipped in. I just saw the little spring pop down, so that seemed to be what fixed her wagon. Alright. So that Jiffy tight connection is on. That's one coolant line. This is all your oil, and we got one more coolant line to pop on. Make sure hose is clean, or pipe I mean. Alright, well we have our turbocharger all tidied back up again. There's absolutely no reason now why we can't stuff in the transmission. That way we can put our transmission cross maneuver back here and this damn engine stops acting like a pogo stick. And then we'll get our exhaust on. We'll pretty much button up everything behind it and we'll finish our front cover. I got Wes here to help me stab this transmission. This is not going to look awesome on camera because there's just not a lot to it. The easy thing to do is line up one of your torque converter bolt holes where you can see it through the inspection cover, and then you're going to want to clock your torque converter pretty similar. That way when you get it up there you just have to, you know, move it a little bit with your fingers. Let's go up there and put her in the way she came out, hopefully without so much trouble with the torque converter. Hey, give me just a second, get this wire harness out of the way here. Alright, here we go. Cooler lines over there. going to tilt the snout up a bit. When you get right about here, where you can easily see the two surfaces, you want to go ahead and try to parallel them now. And you want the back of the engine facing down a bit. Look pretty parallel to you? Yeah. All right. Let me get over here.
You got that back bolt out with it. Bracket.
Oh yeah, good call.
And speaking of, let me get the shield out of the way here. Watch those wires. Afraid I'm gonna pinch them as I go all the way up.
You want to tilt the engine up just a hair and then...
I'm just more worried about hang on a second. Let me bring this down just a hair.
Good. Oh, yeah. We've got our engine spacer plate on. We put a dab of grease around it to help hold it, but that thing will still come off and end up punching you in the hand.
You got that massive plug there.
Yeah.
And all the stuff there. Alright.
Yeah, all that goes right there.
Yeah, I was worried about crushing that big plug.
Right about there. Alright, I'm going to turn the crank a bit. Music. Let's see. There, push it forward. Bolts are lined up. How's the dowel? Looks like we need to twist just a bit.
Which way?
Oh, god damn it. You push that spacer back on.
Still up there. Roll it towards me.
Yeah. Oh, that doesn't roll it. That shifts it side to side.
Oh, does it?
There we go. Our bolts have just started through the converter. We're just trying to get lined up with the dowel.
Come up a bit, maybe?
Just a bit. Oh, fuck. You got that. Come over this way just a bit. Alright. That should. This should be it right there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Can't tell if it went up on that pin or not, but
Run it on there. It looks like it did. It looks like we're sitting pretty flush. You want to get at least 2 bolts started in that bell housing. Hey, hold up just 1 second. I'll show you something. Another thing you want to do is before you go cranking down those bell housing bolts, you want to make sure that you aren't sandwiching your torque converter against the flex plate, because that will destroy your pump the very first second you hit that starter. An easy way to do that is just by sound. Our torque converter should be nice and loose against it. You hear that sound? That's the bolts slapping against the torque converter, so I know that there's plenty of play and we're not hurting. Remember, your 2 short bolts are what go backwards into the bell housing, and the threads are in the bell housing. This one holds the shifter cable out of the way. It's right up there. Which one? That one with the shield.
oh, that's not the way. Is that vent tubing.
It just sticks right up there.
It goes up towards the top. There it goes up.
Alright folks, and that's the transmission in. We just gotta put on our torque converter bolts. It's nice to be able to actually start putting parts back on the damn thing. We're not going to worry about putting on the load spreaders yet. We're just putting one bolt in at a time right now. I got her backwards. You hold that side up for me. Now we can do the letter again. There she goes. She's rested all on her own now. Get our trainee jack out of the way. I'm not going to bore you with that. Alright, well, I've got help out here. We're going to go ahead and stab this drive shaft. We got all our tools staged up. All our surfaces have been cleaned. We wire brushed our bolts. They have fresh Loctite on them. Ford wants you to replace them, but and we have one bolt on the driver's side in for the carrier bearing, because the carrier bearing is slotted, so that will help you get it hung. I'm going to run them in just a bit. Alright. You're going to want two people for this. This thing's very heavy.
That was when, like 2017?
No. Before she got COVID.
Oh yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yep. That bolt's in the
Let's get this one real quick.
That impact is right over here. It has a magnetic socket on it. Okay, go ahead and grab that real quick. I'm gonna find it. Alright. And don't worry, that's exactly as horrible as it looks. As I was saying, somebody's going to say that I should have marked the drive shaft in relation to the pinion flange and the companion flange up front, and that is not the case. The drive shaft is balanced as a whole unit, completely irregardless of the companion flange or the pinion flange, so that is absolutely not necessary to do that. Thank you very much, sir, for helping me hang that big bastard. And I had to hop jump around because I only have help out here for a short amount of time. So we are going to basically do the reverse process. We got new torque converter bolts, and we're going to bar this engine over by hand, line them up. And again, that's another good check right there before you go tighten anything up. If you can hear that, that's because when I jerk the flywheel, the torque converter actually kind of clinks back and forth. That means the torque converter is fully seated in its home, and when you tighten it down to the bell housing, you're not going to screw up the transmission pump. So we got new torque converter bolts, and for just a extra bit of precaution, I put a dab of Loctite on them. Something you definitely don't want coming loose. Alright, so torque on these guys is 76 foot-pounds, and you're going to have that problem right there. So we haven't hooked up our shifter cable yet, so this is real simple. Just going to pop it in park right there. There we go. We're going to torque these down to 76. And then I'm going to go directly across from it. And down. And above it, just a crisscross pattern. Alright, and then we'll do the fronts. So we're just doing a crisscross pattern. Double check them all. And now we've got to tighten up our loop here. Torque on these is only 18 foot-pounds. Now we can do the carrier bearings. Torque on these guys is 35 foot-pounds. Oh, helps with that. You get that. For this rear one too. Again, Ford wants you to replace that bolt, that bolt, that bolt because, well, it's got their Loctite on it and it's made of a proprietary blend of 11 herbs and spices. Or you can just wire brush it, throw some more 242 on it, and torque it to 18 foot-pounds, all three of these guys. Now we can pop our shifter cable back on. Remember, don't forget this tab up here that holds your shifter cable away from the transmission. And then we have this 15mm bolt right here to snug up. I don't know the torque spec and it's impossible to torque, and all it does is hold the bracket, so just snug that thing up. Also, while I'm here, if you had to take this off if you're replacing a transmission with a new one, all of these studs get torqued to 46 foot-pounds. So I don't believe I got this on film, putting the starter and the ground strap back on. It's the same torque, 35 foot-pounds, and that ground strap goes right there on the other side of the starter. It's pretty self-explanatory. Just pop it back in the hole and bolt it in. And now we have this shield here that goes over these back two bolts and protects that wire. $189 inch-pounds on all these. Or you just snug them down and call it a day because it's literally just holding on a shield. Whichever you prefer. Alright everybody, we're back. Today we're going to be putting on the cats and then we can start the front tear down. I've got my lovely Mrs. Walter here helping us out. We both just got our rabies vaccine, so she's up here at work with me for a little bit. This guy, these two bolts, you see up there on the turbocharger, those two nuts that we took off of. This needs to slide over those two bolts there. Okay. Just hold that side for me for just a second. These are actually a lot easier to hang than the 3.7's cats. And ironically, these almost never go out versus the 3.7. I think it's because a lot of the heat is already expended at the turbo before it hits the catalytic converters. On hand tight. So it's a new cat with all new O2 sensors. Just because if I'm replacing the cats, I might as well put on new O2 sensors. To be clear, these cats that we had were still functional. It's just such a pain to replace it on these, and it requires replacement of so many parts like the control arms that I figured while we were in here we should go ahead and do it with the mileage that's on here. Catalytic converters usually warranty at 85,000. That's under normal driving conditions. As you can see by the engine on this thing, it is nowhere near normal driving conditions. They get pushed really hard, and I would really hate for 20,000 miles from now to be getting the PO 420 or anything like that and have to drop that whole subframe all over again. So we're just going to go ahead and replace these while we're in here and put some new O2 sensors, and hopefully won't have any problem with it. You got to understand, you know, you probably see me replacing a lot of parts willy-nilly, but this is a vehicle that people's lives depend on, and we'd much rather just replace the parts now while it's here torn apart and get a lot more hassle-free miles out of it than have it keep coming back to the shop. Alright, now we can get that transmission cross member back in. Backwards.
Yeah, it is backwards.
Yep. Yeah, backwards.
Keep doing things backwards.
Snug, but if you want to, you can go ahead and torque the centers because those aren't going to move. But we will need to put on our load bearers later. Alright, now we can get Jack out of the way.
Still always get that.
Get out of here, Jack.
Get the road, Jack.
You pause.
Right, you stay on that.
So now that we got that up in place, we can go ahead and reattach our O2 sensors to their brackets. And then we'll torque down all the bolts. So it's a little hard to get this on video, but it's pretty simple. You're just popping the connectors right back where they went and putting all of their factory wire retainers back where they came from. If you can see that there, but the O2 sensor's wire retainer actually goes to this wire right here. So make sure that gets retained because you're next to a hot transmission and exhaust and everything, and you don't want those wires touching anything they're not supposed to.